You know that voice in your head that never stops, the one that narrates everything, judges everything, plans everything. That's not you thinking, that's you drowning. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. You feel it in the morning, before your feet touch the floor, a heaviness that has nothing to do with the body. It's the weight of 10,000 thoughts that never reached completion, questions that loop back into themselves, conversations you're still having with people who aren't in the room, futures you're building and destroying in the same breath. Your mind is a city that never sleeps. Neon signs flashing with worry, traffic jams of should-haves and what-ifs, construction sites of plans that may never break ground. And somewhere beneath all that noise, beneath the honking and the hammering and the endless hum of mental machinery, there's a stillness you've forgotten how to reach. We call it overthinking, but that's not quite right. Thinking is purposeful. Thinking has direction. What we're doing is something else entirely. We're avoiding. We're running. We're filling every moment of silence with mental static because silence has become unbearable. Have you noticed? The moment you're alone with nothing to do, the volume in your head increases. The moment you lie down to rest, suddenly every embarrassing thing you've ever said comes flooding back. Every unfinished task, every uncertain future. The mind rushes in like water filling a vacuum because it cannot tolerate emptiness. But here's what we don't realize: that emptiness isn't the problem. That silence isn't the enemy. The noise, all that relentless mental chatter, isn't protecting you from anything. It's protecting you from yourself, from the part of you that the noise is designed to cover up. Because beneath the thinking mind, beneath the analyzer and the worrier and the planner, there is something else. Something that doesn't speak in words. Something that doesn't argue or explain or defend. The mystics called it the soul. The Buddhists call it original nature. Psychologists might call it the authentic self. The name doesn't matter. What matters is this: it's been trying to reach you, and you've been too loud to hear it. Your soul doesn't shout. It doesn't compete with your thoughts. It doesn't argue for attention. It simply waits. And when you fill every moment with noise, with scrolling, with planning, with replaying, with consuming, you ensure that the waiting continues. Think about the last time you felt truly at peace, not distracted, not entertained, not numbed, actually at peace. For most of us, we have to reach back years, maybe to a moment in nature, maybe to a moment of sudden beauty that stopped us in our tracks, maybe to the seconds just after meditation or prayer, when the mind finally exhausted itself and went quiet. In those moments, something else emerges, a knowing that doesn't come from thinking, a clarity that doesn't require analysis, a sense of rightness that needs no justification. That's your soul speaking in the only language it knows: direct experience. Pure presence, wordless understanding. But we've become terrified of it. Terrified of what we might hear if we actually got quiet. Terrified that in the silence, we'll discover we're living the wrong life, that we're wearing the wrong face, that we've been following someone else's map and calling it our own journey. So we keep the radio on, we keep the notifications coming, we keep the mental gears grinding, because as long as we're thinking, we don't have to feel. As long as we're planning, we don't have to be present. As long as we're analyzing, we don't have to trust. The mind is a magnificent tool. It can solve problems, build bridges, write symphonies. But we've made it into a tyrant. We've let it occupy every room in the house of our being. We've given it not just the driver's seat, but every seat, and now it believes it's the only passenger that matters. Meanwhile, the soul sits in the back, silent, patient, waiting for the mind to tire itself out. Here's the truth we keep avoiding. Your mind is loud because your life has become a conversation with everyone except yourself. You're living in response mode, reacting to emails, to expectations, to the voices of parents, partner, society, algorithms. You're thinking about what they think about what you're thinking. You're 3 levels removed from your own experience. And the soul. The soul can't speak that language. It doesn't deal in opinions or comparisons or strategies. It speaks in feelings, in intuitions, in the sudden knowing that stops you mid-sentence, in the quiet yes or no that arises before the mind can justify or explain it away. When the mind is loud, it's often because we've betrayed that inner knowing one too many times. We've overridden it. We've said, maybe later, to its gentle tugging. We've chosen what makes sense over what feels true. And each time we do that, the mind grows a little louder, filling the space with justifications, with rationalizations, with the endless work of convincing ourselves that we made the right choice. The noise isn't random, it's compensation. It's the mind working overtime to maintain a life that the soul never agreed to. We've built an entire civilization around avoiding this inner voice. We celebrate business. We worship productivity. We've turned constant mental activity into a virtue and called it ambition, intelligence, engagement. But strip away the noble words and you'll find something simpler. We're afraid to be alone with ourselves. Look at how we structure our days. We wake to alarms that jolt us from dreams, the one place the soul speaks freely directly into urgency. We immediately reach for our phones, feeding our minds 1,000 headlines, updates, problems that aren't ours before we've even taken a conscious breath. We schedule ourselves into a corner, leaving no gaps, no buffer zones, no sacred emptiness, where something unplanned might emerge. And we call this adulting. We call this responsibility. We wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor, as if being perpetually overwhelmed is proof that we're doing something important. But here's what we're not saying. Beneath the productivity, beneath the hustle, beneath the carefully curated version of our lives we present to the world, there's a question we're terrified to answer. Am I living or am I performing? Am I here or am I hiding? The Sufis have a teaching: the ego is not your enemy, it's a veil. It's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to protect you from a truth it thinks you can't handle. And so it creates noise. It creates drama. It creates endless problems to solve and analyze, because as long as you're busy fixing things, you won't notice that the life you're fixing isn't the life you want. Your overthinking isn't a disorder. It's a distraction, a brilliant, exhausting distraction from the one question the soul keeps asking: is this really it? Is this who you are? Think about what you think about. Really examine it. How much of your mental energy goes to rehearsing conversations that will never happen, to perfecting explanations no one asked for, to defending choices you're not even sure you believe in, to imagining scenarios, disasters, triumphs, conflicts that exist only in your head. The mind creates these elaborate simulations because simulation is safer than reality. In your head, you can control the variables. You can revise. You can undo. You can be whoever you need to be without the risk of actual vulnerability. But the soul doesn't live in simulation. It only knows what's real. It only responds to what's actually happening right now, in this body, in this moment. And when your attention is constantly projected into past regrets or future anxieties, the soul has nowhere to meet you. Here's how it works. You feel a pull towards something, a gentle inclination. Maybe it's a creative urge. Maybe it's a desire for change. Maybe it's an attraction toward a simpler, slower way of being. The soul whispers this way, and immediately the mind rushes in. It has questions, it has concerns, it needs proof, it wants guarantees. It reminds you of all the times you trusted your feelings and got hurt. It presents evidence, responsibilities, expectations, the very real consequences of disrupting the life you've built. So you hesitate. You tell yourself you'll think about it. And thinking about it becomes its own activity, endless analysis, endless weighing, endless loops of maybe if and yais, but. The clarity you felt in that initial pull gets buried under layers of mental deliberation. And then the soul goes quiet again, not because it gave up, but because it only speaks once. It doesn't debate. It doesn't beg. It simply presents what's true and waits for you to be ready. But the mind never stops. It keeps churning, keeps processing, keeps trying to figure out what the soul already knows. And that churning, that's the noise you're hearing. That's the loudness. That's the mental exhaustion that follows you through your days. You're not tired from thinking too much. You're tired from thinking in circles around a truth you're not ready to face. And there's a cost to this, a real cost. Not measured in productivity or success, but in aliveness, in presence. In the capacity to feel joy without immediately analyzing it, to experience beauty without photographing it, to connect with another human being without narrating the interaction in your head. When the mind is chronically loud, you start to live one step removed from your own life. You're there, but you're also watching yourself be there, commentating, judging, comparing this moment to other moments, worrying about the next moment. You're everywhere except here, and relationships suffer. Because other people can feel when you're not fully present. They can sense when your attention is divided when you're listening with half an ear, while the other half is planning your response or thinking about your to-do list or defending yourself against something they didn't even accuse you of. Intimacy requires silence. Real connection happens in the spaces between words, in the moments when two people are simply present with each other without agenda or armor. But if your inner world is all noise, there's no space for that kind of meeting. You bring your loudness into every interaction and wonder why you feel so alone. The soul knows how to connect. It recognizes itself in others. It speaks the language of shared humanity. But it can't do its work when the mind is running the show, cataloging differences, maintaining boundaries, protecting the ego from imagined threats. So what do we do? How do we turn down the volume? How do we create space for the soul to speak? The answer is simpler than you think and harder than you'd like. You stop feeding the noise. You stop treating your thoughts as if they're all equally important. You stop believing that every mental impulse requires your attention, your response, your engagement. Because here's what nobody tells you. Most of your thoughts are just habits. Mental loops you've run so many times they feel like truth. The same worries, the same judgments, the same stories about who you are and what's possible. They're not insights. They're reruns. And the first step toward quiet isn't to stop thinking that's impossible. And the attempt will just create more noise. The first step is to simply notice. To observe your thoughts without climbing inside them. To watch the mind do its thing without believing that its thing is the only thing happening. This is what meditation teachers have been saying for thousands of years, but we keep misunderstanding it. Meditation isn't about emptying the mind. It's about recognizing that you are not your mind, that there's a you beneath the thinking, watching the thinking, aware of the thinking. That awareness, that witnessing presence, that's the soul. That's the part of you that can observe thought without being swept away by it. That can feel emotion without becoming it. That can experience life directly without the constant narration. Start small, start honest. Find moments in your day where you consciously choose silence over stimulation, not as punishment, not as discipline, but as an experiment, as a small act of rebellion against the tyranny of constant input. Maybe it's the first 5 minutes after you wake up, before the phone, before the plans, just you breathing present. Maybe it's the walk from your car to your door, where you resist the urge to scroll or call or listen and instead just walk. Feel your feet. Notice the air. Let your senses report directly to you without the mind's commentary. Maybe it's sitting with your coffee in actual silence, not productive silence where you're planning your day, but spacious silence where you're not doing anything with your attention. You're just here, just being, just allowing whatever wants to surface. And in those moments, something will happen. At first, the mind will panic. It will offer you 1,000 reasons why this is a waste of time. It will remind you of all the things you should be doing. It will create phantom urgencies. This is normal. This is the mind doing what it's been trained to do. But if you gently, kindly refuse to engage with the noise, something underneath will begin to emerge. A stillness, a presence, a quality of being that doesn't need to go anywhere or become anything. And in that stillness, you'll hear it. Not in words, not in commands, but in a feeling, a knowing, a quiet rightness that doesn't shout but doesn't waver. That's your soul. That's been there all along, underneath the noise, waiting for you to get quiet enough to remember it. Learning to hear your soul is like learning to hear a whisper in a thunderstorm. You can't do it by shouting louder. You have to change the environment. You have to choose quiet. And this isn't about adding more to your life. It's not another practice to perfect, another goal to achieve. It's actually about subtraction. About removing the layers of noise you've wrapped yourself in. About questioning the constant need to be informed, entertained, productive, connected. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding when I reach for my phone? What feeling am I not wanting to feel when I fill every silence with a podcast or playlist? What truth am I running from when I keep myself so busy I never have time to think? These aren't comfortable questions. They're not meant to be. But they're the questions that create space, that crack open the door, that invite something deeper to emerge. And here's the beautiful part. Once you start listening to your soul, Once you start honoring that quiet knowing, your life begins to change. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually, naturally, like a river finding its true course. You start making different choices. Small ones at first. You decline invitations that feel wrong, even if they look right. You speak your truth even when it's awkward. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't really asking. You let go of relationships that require you to be smaller. You pursue things that light you up, even if they don't make sense on paper. And the mind will have opinions about all of this. It will call you selfish, irresponsible, knave. It will remind you of your obligations, your image, what people will think. This is normal. This is the mind trying to protect the life it knows, even if that life is killing you slowly. But underneath the noise, underneath the fear, the soul remains clear. It doesn't argue with the mind. It just knows. And when you follow that knowing, when you trust it more than you trust your thoughts, you discover something astonishing. You discover that the soul was never leading you astray. That every time you honored that inner knowing, even when it made no logical sense, things worked out. Not always easily, not always painlessly, but they worked out right. They led you toward yourself, toward authenticity, toward the life you're actually meant to live, not the life you thought you should live. There's a version of your life where the soul leads and the mind serves. Where thought is a tool you use rather than a prison you inhabit. Where silence isn't something you fear, but something you crave, because you know that's where truth lies. This isn't mysticism. This isn't spirituality as escape. This is the most practical thing in the world, learning to distinguish between the voice of fear and the voice of wisdom, between mental noise and inner knowing, between living from the outside in and living from the inside out. When you live from your soul, you stop performing. You stop trying to convince everyone, including yourself, that you're okay, that you've got it figured out, that you're on the right path. You simply are, present, real, undefended. And paradoxically, this is when you become most effective, most creative, most alive. Because you're no longer dividing your energy between what you're doing and what you think you should be doing. You're not arguing with reality. You're not second-guessing every choice. You're aligned, integrated, whole. The Zen masters call it no mind. The Sufis call it fana, annihilation of the false self. Western psychology calls it flow state. Different words for the same experience. When the mental chatter drops away, and you're simply here, fully engaged, moving from a place of deep knowing rather than surface thinking. And you can't force this. You can't think your way into it. But you can create conditions. You can choose quiet. You can practice presence. You can stop feeding the noise and start honoring the stillness. Here's what most people get wrong about peace. They think it's the absence of problems. They think it's what happens when life finally settles down, when all the loose ends are tied up, when everything is in order. So they keep postponing it. They tell themselves they'll find peace when they finish this project, when they get that promotion, when they fix this relationship, when they finally figure everything out. But that day never comes. There's always another project, another problem, another thing that needs fixing. Life doesn't settle down. It just continues. And if you're waiting for external conditions to create internal peace, you'll wait forever. Real peace, soul, deep peace isn't conditional. It's not the result of having no thoughts. It's the result of not being enslaved by them. It's the capacity to experience mental noise without becoming it. To acknowledge anxiety without obeying it. To hear the mind's concerns without letting them dictate your every move. This is what spiritual teachers mean when they talk about transcendence. They don't mean escaping life or problems or thoughts. They mean finding the part of you that's bigger than all of that. The awareness that can hold it all, the noise and the quiet, the pain and the joy, the questions and the mystery without needing to resolve it into something comfortable. Your soul knows how to do this. It's been doing it all along. It holds space for your entire human experience without judgment, without panic, without needing anything to be different than it is. It's the mind that demands certainty, the mind that needs control, the mind that believes if it just thinks hard enough, long enough, it can protect you from life's inherent uncertainty. But you can't think your way to peace. You can only be your way there. And being requires you to stop doing, stop analyzing, stop protecting, long enough to simply rest in what's real. So here's the invitation. What if you trusted the quiet more than the noise? What if you treated that inner knowing, that felt sense of yes or no, as the primary intelligence, and thought as secondary? What if you made decisions based on what feels true, rather than what makes sense? I'm not suggesting you abandon reason. I'm suggesting you stop letting reason have the final word on matters of the heart, matters of the soul, matters that can't be solved but only lived. Because there are questions that don't have answers. There are longings that can't be explained. There are truths about who you are, and what you're here for that will never fit neatly into a logical framework. And when you try to force them, when you demand that your soul speak the language of the mind, you create confusion. You create noise. You create the very loudness you're trying to escape from. But when you learn to listen on the soul's terms in stillness, in presence, in the direct experience of being alive, clarity emerges. Not as thought, as knowing, as a quiet certainty that doesn't need justification. Your mind is loud because your soul is unheard. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Every moment is an opportunity to choose differently, to pause, to breathe, to drop beneath the mental chatter and touch something deeper. It won't be dramatic. There won't be fireworks. The soul doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It simply offers itself quietly, constantly, like a hand extended in the dark. All you have to do is reach back. Stop waiting for life to get quieter. Stop waiting for the perfect conditions. Start now, this moment, this breath. Let the noise be there. Don't fight it, but don't follow it either. Just be, just listen, just stay. The soul has been speaking to you your entire life. It's time to hear what it's been trying to say. And when you finally do, when you finally get quiet enough to hear, that whisper underneath everything, you'll realize something beautiful. You'll realize you've been looking for yourself in all the wrong places. You've been seeking answers in your thoughts, when the answer was always in your being. You've been trying to think your way home, when home was never something you could be. Only something you could be. The noise will still be there tomorrow. The world will still demand your attention. But you'll be different. Because you'll know the difference between the voice that plans and the voice that knows, between the mind that protects and the soul that guides. And in that knowing, you'll find a peace that doesn't depend on anything going right, a clarity that doesn't require certainty, a home that you've never actually left. You were never lost, just loud. Now, be quiet and listen.